this should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential.
Technical difficulties aside, we are still here and we are still getting it popping here at Fourth and Frames. I'm Rhett Manuel here with my boy Drew Scott, here with Aidan Weingardner and Kyle Ziegler. As tonight we're going to sit here and talk about must, bust, and value-based players based on their ADP for every team in the AFC North. And don't forget to like and subscribe and review anytime a new podcast from here at Fantasy and Frames drops or a short. You can also search for any of our podcasts at Fantasy and Frames, wherever you listen to podcasts by name. For us, go ahead and lock in on that Fantasy and that Fourth and Frames podcast. And don't forget, fantasyandframes.com for the latest weekly IDP and Dynasty rankings, articles, takes, news and notes, all those good things. So, snap aside, Drew Scott, it's the first time this has happened to us in a little over 2 years. I don't want you to be disappointed in me, so tell me where you are right now, bud.
Oh, you totally redeemed yourself whenever you coined the term technical difficulties. That is fantastic. That is so good. So you are completely forgiven. That was great.
Aidan, how are you tonight, dude?
Yeah, I'm great. If it did happen in the past, I wouldn't know it because this is my first year, so you're doing great.
And Kyle, last and certainly not least.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Nobody even know about our little technical difficulty, but you let the cat out of the bag, which is okay. We're honest with the people. I like it. I'm ready to roll. Let's get it going.
Well, if they didn't know, they probably would have known if they tried to tune in and saw that very quick 5-second blip where the intro and the exit for the draft show just popped up. And even better on the stream when I dropped the good, oh no,
before the music started.
A moment that's going to go down in history here at Fantasy and Frames. But, guys, we're not talking about history right now. We're talking about the 2025 season. And there are things coming out all the time. So let's get into some news and notes. First off, with Najee Harris expecting to begin training camp on the non-football injury list after suffering an eye injury in a fireworks accident on the 4th of July. One that was called superficial, but nonetheless, if it was just superficial, then we wouldn't be on the non-football injury list. So, Drew, this is a weird one. We seem to have more and more fireworks-based hijinks as the years go on in the NFL. Shout out Jason Pierre-Paul, the OG of this nonsense. Dude, what do we make of this?
I'm not really making much of it, to be honest with you. I was already pretty high on Omarion Hampton, so I'm not I'm not really moving him up right now. I've still got him at running back 17. If Najee does miss training camp snaps and Hampton gets to be the guy from the get-go, I do think that could help his early season outlook to an extent, but I was already expecting Hampton to take over this backfield sooner rather than later, regardless anyway. So it's not really moving the needle much for me. I don't think we should overreact. I know I saw what I thought was some overreactions on Twitter whenever the news first broke about him needing to be moved up into like the top 10 and right behind Jonathan Taylor and things like that. I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit, but I think this is going to be Hampton's backfield regardless. So it doesn't do much for me.
Yeah. Any other thoughts between you or Kyle, Aidan?
No, I'm pretty much right on their board with Drew. I mean, his feet work, so he can definitely get out there and run. So, yeah, he'll be fine.
Yeah,
only thing is, go ahead.
I've been pretty steadfast for the last couple of months since Hampton was drafted that this will be like a committee / two-way split, and I still anticipate that. It sounds like Najee Harris will only miss about a week of the start of training camp, if that, honestly. So it's whatever. Yeah, it's a weird situation, but I don't think it affects rankings much, if at all.
Fellas, the thing is, you guys are overlooking one of the most important aspects of a running back, and the eyes are kind of an important part of that, ladies and gentlemen. Vision, like
Najee's vision already sucked.
Yeah. So, what did we really lose? Not much. All right. So on to more depressing news. Browns rookie running back Quinshon Judkins arrested in Florida for a battery and domestic violence charge. Aidan, You hate to see it. God. So, like, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail later about the Cleveland Browns backfield. But what were your just initial reactions when you saw that news?
So when Quinshon Judkins was first drafted to the Browns, I was kind of lukewarm on it because obviously the offensive ecosystem, I feel, isn't very good. And what if they use Dylan Sampson? What if Stefanski uses Jerome Ford? I know he's a Jag, the guy, but still. And I thought Judkins could be the two-down grinder and maybe evolve into a workhorse. But obviously now that he's suspended, we'll get into Dylan Sampson. We'll see if Jerome Ford it sounds like maybe he will be suspended. I don't want to say he's suspended yet. Maybe Jerome Ford will continue to get some work. Maybe Dylan Sampson pops, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, at first I was like, whoa, what's going to happen here? But you know how the league works, man. They're just going to let everything play out, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Luckily, it's July right now, so we do have time for that to come down to see what's going to happen. But yeah, it is probably looking like a definite suspension at some point, but it's just a matter of let's get all the facts lined up and we'll get it figured out here.
And Aidan, I'm a little bit offended on Jerome Ford's behalf on the fact that you called him just another guy, because if you look, and we're not going to discuss tonight, so this is as good a spot as any. If Judkins does get suspended and he does miss some time, this is a good thing for Jerome Ford, because you're looking at a guy who last year, according to Player Profiler, was top 10 in true yards per carry. He was number 7 amongst running backs in yards per touch. He was number 4 in yards created per touch. He had a number 10 explosive rating. He had an 86% catch rate. Like, this is not just a guy. This is a guy he was 21st in fantasy points per opportunity. The thing with him is that it's just always been a snap share situation. Like, so you can say what you want about Jerome Ford. I've always been a fan of the guy. I get the opportunity hasn't always been there, and it may not even be there on a significant basis with Dylan Sampson this year, but it does give Jerome Ford some additional draftable value because he is a guy that has some very good upside and has some spike weeks in him for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to. Let me rephrase that. I personally kind of lukewarm on him. I don't think he's completely a Jag, but clearly the Browns thought he was with the drafting of Judkins and Sampson at the time.
Got you. All right, guys. So those are the news and notes. Let's get into the AFC North and those must bust and value players. And once again, to review things, these are players that we think are that we must draft, bust, or values based on their current Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings in half PPR formats. So let's go to the top of the division. Let's start off. We all know who runs this division on an annual basis. It is the Baltimore Ravens. It's death, it's taxes, it's the Baltimore Ravens being one of the best franchises in the NFL. So, Kyle, we're going to go ahead and start off with you. No surprise as to where you're going with a must play with your must draft, because there are a couple of them here in this situation. I would have said Lamar Jackson, but your pick is just as good, especially at his current ADP.
Yeah, he's currently a top 5 running back, and I'm going with Derrick Henry because instead of Lamar Jackson, because there's other quarterbacks you can get later. You don't have to go Lamar here. So, I mean, I do like Derrick Henry a lot, top 5 back, making him a solid late first-round pick. And given his performance and consistency, this ranking is totally justifiable. He's second most in explosive yards behind Saquon Barkley, top 5 in touchdown rate percentage, and he can't be tackled. You guys know that. Nobody can tackle him. He's tied for first for most missed tackles forced there with James Conner. And I know Rhett and others are a little bit worried about his age and hitting that cliff, which is a fair concern. He is entering his age 31 season, so I get it. And he's logged the most carries by any running back over the past 5 years. But this dude is just built different, y'all. He hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. And one thing I love about Derrick Henry in this Ravens offense is you don't have to worry about Lamar Jackson on the goal line stealing his carries on the one like you do with Saquon Barkley with Jalen Hurts with the tush push, because the Ravens don't run it. They hand the ball to 22 on the 1 yard line. That's their tush push. So, yeah, getting yourself some Derrick Henry, don't chicken little this, guys. The sky isn't falling. Go get yourself some Derrick Henry.
Great reference.
I mean, it's straightforward. I mean, it's death, it's taxes, it's Derrick Henry. I know that there is a day that's coming where Derrick Henry does have the fall off and he's rolling his eyes right now. But here's the thing, and this is why he's so different and why he's the exception for me and not the rule, is because I don't know how to predict the Derrick Henry fall off. Like with Christian McCaffrey, you see the injury history and you're like, okay, the cliff's probably coming pretty soon, blah, blah, blah. But with Derrick Henry, who ever since he's kind of just started rolling and he's had these 300 touch seasons, he's also managed to stay remarkably healthy through all that time. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. He's a top 5 running back for a reason. I'm not predicting the cliff fall off this year. So, all your little snarky comments about his age and Rhett and all these other people, you can shelve them at least for this year with Derrick Henry, bud. Go somewhere with that. Chris Battistell, real quick, asking us, going around the frames, Drew, Derrick Henry, or Josh Jacobs?
Derrick Henry.
Aidan?
I do like Josh Jacobs a lot because it's also running of the offense. I think it's closer than you might think, but Derrick Henry.
Kyle?
Don't chicken little this. Derrick Henry.
Yeah, we're on lockstep on this. I think Derrick Henry's the move here. But Drew, let's go bust. Knowing you as well as I do after doing this show for a couple years together, let's just be honest. You're standing on your Rashad Bateman hill and you're standing on business this year, right? Or it's just, are we just looking at the situation Zay Flowers is in as the ECR wide receiver 25? What do you see? What scares you? Because he's a guy that's been pretty productive his first 2 years, but just hasn't managed to have that big breakout season yet.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm going to make this case without mentioning Rashad Bateman once, believe it or not. But to me, Zay Flowers just feels like one of those guys that's a better real life football player than a fantasy asset. And I say that because I don't want anybody to think that I think Flowers will be a bust for fantasy football, that I think he's going to be a bad football player, because that's not the case at all. There were 53 receivers with at least 75 targets last year, and among those 53 receivers, Flowers was 17th in targets per route run, 14th in yards per route run, and 10th in yards after the catch per reception. Like he's a really talented receiver, and of course he could always take another step forward in his third season. I just struggle drafting him where he's going right now because I feel like that the upside is capped. The fact that Flowers is a part of one of the best offenses in football, he's attached to one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It all seems attractive on the surface, but it hasn't mattered, at least up to this point, for Flowers' fantasy value. Last year, Lamar finished with career highs in passing attempts, passing yards, and passing touchdowns. He had over 4,000 passing yards and 41 passing touchdowns last year. It should have won the MVP. But all of that led to Zay Flowers finishing as the wide receiver 33 in points per game. And now we fast forward to this year after a career Lamar season and Zay Flowers finishing as the wide receiver 33. Now this year he's going as the wide receiver, and his ECR ranking is the wide receiver 25. And I don't know where the fantasy points are supposed to come from for him to go from 33 to 25. The Ravens are likely going to once again be one of, if not the most run-heavy offense in the NFL. And Flowers has already been the target leader for the Ravens in each of the first 2 seasons of his career. Like, he's already getting the targets. There's just not a lot of targets to go around, and it feels like he's going to have to have a spike in touchdowns for the ADP to pay off. And while it could happen, that's not a bet I'm willing to make at the wide receiver 25 ADP or expert consensus ranking. Whenever he was 35th among receivers and end zone targets last year. And so I've got him at wide receiver 32. It's 7 spots lower than his current ranking in the ECR. So as much as I love Zay Flowers, the NFL player, he would be my bust for the Ravens for fantasy purposes.
And dude, a lot of that it's a very strong case that you're making in that situation, because what have we seen so far out of Zay Flowers that says that a guy who was a wide receiver at 33 last year, like you said, for him to come back this year and be ranked almost 10 slots higher is kind of kind of interesting to me. So I want to go once again. Let's just go quickly around the frames. We're not going to play this bit out, but I just want to play an interesting comparison case and see who you guys prefer, because there is a guy that we've talked about last week that was more productive than Zay Flowers last year that is going below him this year. So, Aidan, I'll start with you. I know that we talked about Brock Bowers and his target competition last year, but would you take Zay Flowers or Jacoby Myers?
I think Zay Flowers. I think the Raiders are going to be more run heavy with Ashton Gianti, and I think Jacoby Myers is what he is. I don't know how much ceiling there is there, so I will go with Zay Flowers in this scenario.
Okay.
Are we talking ADP or just wide receiver for wide receiver?
Based off of ADP, who would you take? This is fantasy football, so ADP matters. So would you take Zay Flowers at ADP or Jacoby Myers at ADP?
I would take Jacoby Myers considering ADP.
Yeah, but you like Zay Flowers, the talent, more.
No, I wouldn't say that. Drew mentioned it earlier with the passing attempts. I just don't feel like the Baltimore Ravens they don't really pass that much. There's a lot of running involved with the Ravens, and that limits Zay Flowers' ceiling. He's gonna pop off here and there, but Jacoby Myers, I mean, I'll take that as a number 2 receiver there.
Drew, where are you at on this?
I mean, Flowers is my bust pick based on his expert consensus ranking. So I do like Jacoby Myers' draft value more, but just receiver for receiver, I think that Zay Flowers is a better NFL receiver than Jacoby Myers was. If Zay for some reason was dropping in drafts and him and Jacoby were both sitting there at where do I have him at? What did I say? If they were both sitting there at wide receiver 32, where I've got Flowers at, I would take Flowers. I mean, I still have Flowers 7 spots higher than Jacoby.
I think Zay Flowers has more spike week potential throughout the season than Jacoby Myers.
Which is fair. And I think I'm probably a Myers guy, but I think I tweeted that earlier this week that I just feel like he's perpetually underdrafted. But
he's like the new Tyler Lockett. He's underdrafted every year, and he's going to outperform his ADP basically every year.
It's not fun.
That's why I would take him. That's why I would take Myers for that reason. Wide receiver 40, he's probably going to outperform that. He might crack the top 25 at wide receiver. He's got that possibility.
Drew, look at one of our guys here. It's been a while since we've seen him. Jamie is in the chat. Good to see you, bud. But speaking of values and being underdrafted, Aidan, this is an interesting one because last year, whenever he missed the season, Justice Hill came up and he did a very good job as a second running back and was a very interesting PPR floor play for flex situations. So tell us why you prefer Keaton Mitchell. And we saw the upside 2 years ago. We saw what he could be, but that was pre-Derrick Henry. That was after Justice Hill had a 50-catch season. So what's there for you that makes you excited about Keaton Mitchell?
Yeah, I'm going deep down the well here, man. Keaton Mitchell, as you mentioned, sitting right now currently at ECR RB 72. And in my opinion, for me personally, everyone is drafting and looking at the wrong Ravens backup running back right now. Everyone expecting Justice Hill to be the true handcuff to Derrick Henry. But in my opinion, I want to bet on a more ceiling play. I want to bet on the flashier and more explosive player in Keaton Mitchell. I know they both catch the ball very well, but this might be a hot take. But I think Keaton Mitchell could have standalone value even without a Derrick Henry injury, because we know how run heavy the Ravens offense is. We know how high powered and a lot of touchdown end zone opportunities the Ravens offense is, for that matter. And we saw 2 years ago, again, before he got injured in certain spurts with Keaton Mitchell. And we know, for as much as we love Derrick Henry, me as much as anybody, obviously, he's awesome on the ground, but he's not going to be in those high leverage passing down situations just because he doesn't really catch the ball, whether it's he's not capable of it or the Ravens just don't deploy him like that. So, I mean, RB 72, if Keaton Mitchell just gets completely outsnapped by Justice Hill after the first week or two, you can cut him. Who really cares, though, at RB72? I think just for ceiling and upside alone, and I don't think he's just a true handcuff. I think he could have opportunity even without Derrick Henry as a true explosive pass catcher.
It's an interesting take. Drew, what are your thoughts on it?
I'm not with you on the standalone value part, but I do agree with you that I think between him and Justice Hill, I think that he is the backup running back to draft. I've got him up at running back 65, and I've got Justice Hill like down in the 80s. So I'm with you on Keaton Mitchell being the backup you want. I think if Henry goes down, it's probably going to be a mess of a committee. But I think Keaton Mitchell is the most explosive and most talented back behind Derrick Henry. So I do think if you're going to prioritize a backup running back in Baltimore, I do think it should be Keaton Mitchell.
But to that point, counterpoint, a couple of years ago, it was a committee with Gus Edwards, and Keaton Mitchell still found a way to carve out a role before he got injured.
I think there's a drastic difference between replacing Derrick Henry and replacing Gus Edwards. But
no, I know. I'm just saying the committee. I'm just talking about the committee point.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. If something happens to Henry, he goes down, it turns into a committee. I do think Keaton Mitchell would be the most productive running back in that committee. And would be the one that you would want to roster. I completely agree on that part.
If I were to look at that, and barring a Derrick Henry injury, which we haven't seen, but it's fantasy football, anything can happen. I think there's a very distinct possibility that you see Baltimore go out and get another running back in that situation. So that's just where I am. But let's go ahead and let's move on to a team that is just what a puzzling offseason in Pittsburgh. Like, no one's really sure what direction that team is going in right now. We know they acquired DK Metcalf. We know they drafted. We know they drafted for the running back position. There's a lot going on there. None of us are really sure what the end product is going to look like. So, Drew, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. I already mentioned, or Aidan, I'm going to start with you. I already mentioned your must draft guy in DK Metcalf. I guess my question is, what are you seeing? Do you think Aaron Rodgers can make this viable at 41, 42 years old? I mean, at wide receiver 22, it is a value because he's one of the more talented wide receivers in the league. I also feel like he's, for what he is and how talented he is, also one of the more underperforming wide receivers in the league. So tell me where you're at on DK Metcalf, Aidan.
So the negative here is obviously they run the ball a ton with their two backs, and which I know you guys will talk about, and Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren. And they have an elite defense, so they're going to run up the clock. But on the positive side, they have no one else. I like Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin as late run flyers. But DK Metcalf, let's be honest, is going to drown in targets this year. Like what? 120 to 130? That's just being kind of conservative, in my opinion, for a true number one alpha receiver like Metcalf, because they run the ball a lot, big end zone target. So say what you will about real life Rodgers, but he can support a wide receiver one, not like fantasy terms wide receiver one, but a real life wide receiver one. We saw last year what he did with Garrett Wilson when the year started. So I don't know. I've come around this offense quite a bit. Yes, it's going to be boring, but there's good value, as everyone always says, there's good value to be had for fantasy football with good players on a bad and boring offense. And in this case, it's a very good player in DK Metcalf on a, I don't want to say bad offense, but a boring kind of like lackluster down the field offense. But I do think that he's going to drown the targets, and him and Aaron Rodgers will have a connection immediately. I mean, they traded for DK Metcalf. They gave him a 5-year deal right away. They didn't wait to see him with Aaron Rodgers. They got that out the way immediately. So I'm really excited for DK Metcalf in this offense.
Yeah, they're committed to him. I'm going to agree with that. They have to be, because they traded away George Pickens, and there's not much else that they have there. The tight end position is a complete mess. Yeah. And what a segue, Drew Scott.
Tight end, though.
Oh, boy.
You tied that in perfectly, because Jim, our producer extraordinaire at Fantasy and Frames, we learned over the past week that his Kyle Pitts, which is our running joke this offseason, We all
Here
have
we
a
go.
Kyle Pitts at tight end. Jim's Kyle Pitts is Cole Kmet. So let's go around the frames. Very similar situations. Both teams acquired more athletic tight ends. And I guess they're going to use these two-way tight ends like Freiermuth and Kmet in similar operations. I'm just not sure what the path is for very consistent fantasy relevancy. Who do you guys prefer, or is Jim just making us go with a bid right now? I don't know.
I love where Jim's energy's at, man, with Cole Kmet. He loves that guy so much.
He loves him.
I love it too, because I have him in a 32-team dynasty, and as soon as they drafted Colson Loveland, I broke my phone and said, "This is it.
Oh God,
it's over."
We finally found a league where you can start Cole Kmet.
32-teamer.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I love you, Jim, but if I had to pick one in a redraft, I would still go with Pat Freiermuth.
Any disagreement there?
No, I'd go. I go with Freiermuth too. Like Cole Kmet, even before Colson Loveland, I didn't really think much of him. At least with Pat Freiermuth, we saw spike weeks last year. We've seen spike weeks over his career. If anything were to happen to Jonnu Smith, he would be immediately the second option behind DK Metcalf. I'll go Freiermuth pretty easily.
And I hope I'm wrong. I hope he attacks us and say, like, what'd I tell you? Because I'll be happy in that 32-team dynasty with Cole Kmet if he pops off.
And just for the record,
The answer is just no. But just to give the listeners like a
it's really
peek behind
Kyle
the
Pitts
curtain.
is the answer.
Yeah, the answer is always Kyle Pitts. But there's been a running bit in the Fourth and Frames Discord chat where Ben Johnson tight ends have been productive, and Colson Loveland is kind of out there, and so Jim loves Cole Kmet because of the questions around Loveland, and I can't ever tell if he's joking or serious, but that's kind of where that's coming from. We have spent way more time than we should have talking about Pat Freiermuth and Cole Kmet.
Moving on.
So let's go into a Kyle, your bust player, a guy who I really like watching, a guy who I'm probably irrationally dedicated to. So what you're trying to do tonight is break my heart a little bit, and I'm okay with that. But I need you to make the case as to why Jaylen Warren, even though he's not particularly high at RB31, is a bust this season.
He's not, RB31. We know exactly what Jaylen Warren is. He is a receiving back, and that's perfectly fine. He's 5'8", 216 pounds. He's built to catch and run in space, not really to run between the tackles. I know he can do it, but he's not built to do it as a 3-down work dog. And I think the Steelers confirmed that, man. They spent a third-round draft capital on my favorite rookie running back, Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. Jaylen Warren's entering his fourth season, right? He's never been able to surpass Najee Harris on the depth chart. So even right now, it looks like Warren's the RB1. When you go on like ESPN and you look at the depth chart, it shows that Jaylen Warren is the RB1. But I do think by week one, that's going to be Caleb Johnson. He has the size. He's 6'1", 225 pounds, comes from a zone-based offense at Iowa, fits in perfectly there with Arthur Smith's run scheme. He's the perfect match for this offense. Honestly, I think the value is way inflated on Jaylen Warren, Rhett. He should be ranked ahead of running backs who currently hold clear lead roles in their backfield. I'm talking Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, even Ramondre Stevenson to a point, Cam Scatterboo. I'd rather have those guys. I'd rather draft these guys who are ranked below Jaylen Warren. I think it's a little bit ridiculous that Caleb Johnson's RB28 and Jaylen Warren is RB31. I'm going to let Drew touch up on that for his value play, but I would totally draft Caleb Johnson over Jaylen Warren in the same round and not even think twice.
So you think there should be a bigger gap between the two is what you're saying?
Absolutely. I think he should be around running back 40.
And here's where I think they might have the ECR might somewhat have it right, is that Pittsburgh just kind of feels like a team that's going to go to running backs. And they're both going to have roles.
Two tight ends, two running
backs, one wide receiver, whatever it is. The bottom line is this.
Jesus.
We didn't have coaching turnover in Pittsburgh. So just because Caleb Johnson has a 3-down skill set doesn't mean they're going to use him in a 3-down situation, if that makes sense for you. Yeah, they got rid of Najee Harris. All this tells me is that they found a guy to replace Najee Harris. So, can Caleb Johnson lead this back? Can Caleb Johnson lead this backfield? Absolutely. Do we expect him to take 70% of the snaps? In my opinion, probably not. But Drew, you're going to touch on this a little bit more because you have Caleb Johnson as your value as the ECR running back 28. So I guess you feel like he does have a bit better of a chance to take this backfield than I do, huh?
I mean, yes and no. I kind of agree with you both, but I definitely agree more on Kyle's side. To your point, Rhett, there really hasn't been any turnover in the coaching staff. Jaylen Warren is probably going to keep his same role. And Kyle, where did you say that Jaylen Warren should be closer to in ranking right now?
Running back 40, where he finished last year at running back 41.
Last year, he finishes running back 41 in points per game. And so if all things stay the same, then Kyle's ranking is probably pretty spot on, and he probably is overvalued. So I do agree with that. Caleb Johnson, he's not just like my value pick, my favorite value for the Steelers. This is probably one of my favorite values in fantasy drafts, period, right now. And anytime Caleb Johnson makes it to the 6th round, he's an auto draft for me. I don't know if it's because so many running backs in this class tested so well this year at the combine, but it was weird watching people freak out over Caleb Johnson's combine performance after he ran a 4.5740. Like, yeah, it's not an elite number, but it's not bad either, guys. Like that'll play. And I just don't know why we care so much about how fast someone runs how fast someone runs 40 yards in a straight line in basketball shorts whenever we have GPS data of him hitting 22 miles per hour in pads in an actual college football game. Like he's
faster
plenty
on
fast.
film.
Yeah, he's plenty fast. He's a really good zone runner, and he just got dropped into Arthur Smith's zone heavy run scheme. Like to me, it's like a match made in heaven. And I like Jaylen Warren, the player, but I feel like we've seen enough from him to know what he is. And I don't think he is going to step in to fill anything that Najee Harris left behind. It seems pretty obvious to me that you take Caleb Johnson and insert here into what Najee Harris was for the Steelers last year. And look, Najee Harris had like 300 touches or right around 300 touches last year. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but so I don't know. I don't think Caleb Johnson will get every bit of that as a rookie, but I could easily see him getting 250 plus touches in this offense as a rookie. And the mistakes that would usually keep rookies off the field, I don't think will be as much of an issue for Caleb. He does still have some work to do as a pass blocker, but there's already been clips of him in camp trying to pick Jaylen Warren's brain on that and trying to get better as far as that goes. And in his last year in college, he had 262 touches and he didn't fumble the ball once. Like the fumbling issues that get some rookies in troubles or just some running backs in trouble in general, I don't think is going to be an issue for Caleb Johnson. And even though I think his pass catching ability is underrated, I view it kind of like whenever Ken Walker was coming out of college in Michigan State and everybody was talking about him being a 2-down back and he couldn't catch the ball out of the backfield. I thought that was a little bit off. Not that he's an elite pass catcher, but I think he's a serviceable pass catcher, same way that I look at Caleb Johnson. I think that he can catch the ball. I still expect Jaylen Warren to have that similar role. Like I that's where Rhett, I do agree with you. I think that their roles will be very similar to what Najee's and Jaylen Warren's were last year. But even after factoring in Jaylen Warren, I still have Caleb 5 spot higher than his ranking in the ECR. I've got him at running back 23, and I've got him ahead of names like Isaiah Pacheco, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, all of which are in front of Caleb right now in the Fantasy Pros Experts consensus ranking. So I think he's one of the best value in drafts, period, right now.
I mean, you make a great case for him. I'll say that. I mean, as someone who is, didn't watch much Big Ten football. I'm an SEC guy. I'm from the South, so Saturdays we're locked in on the SEC stuff. So it just means more. Yeah. Which, by the way, the most cringeworthy tagline for any conference. It's so bad. But we're not going to get into an SEC diatribe. Let's just get straight into the Cincinnati Bengals because we're going to go to the SEC anyway, Drew. because your must draft is a no-brainer. I'm even going to touch on it a little bit later. The man he's untouchable. There's what seems like the silliest post-draft narrative of all time. With Jamar Chase couldn't catch a football because there wasn't stripes on the ball. That seems like a lifetime ago because it actually is. He's the ECR wide receiver 1, and you're still saying he's a must draft. He's one of these players I like to call an Avenger, Drew. He is an Avenger. He is an Infinity Stone. He is a guy that if you have him on your team, you immediately have league winning upside, and you've got to see it the same way, huh?
Yeah, so I'll keep this one pretty short, partially because the actual answer that I wanted for the must draft for the Bengals is actually the player that Kyle picked for his value. So obviously I love Kyle's value pick, and I'll let him talk about that in a little bit. And the other reason is because I just don't really think I need to convince anybody to draft Jamar Chase. But the reality is you're going to need the 101, maybe the 102 if the person at the 101 really wants a running back and takes Saquon or Bijan. Maybe you get lucky and you get to take him at the 102. But if you want to draft Jamar Chase, you're going to have to be up there. That's exactly where I think he should be going. He's my wide receiver 1. He's my 101 for fantasy drafts this year. I fully expect Joe Burrow to be right back at the top in pass attempts once again this year. And since the Bengals have been recently specializing in pissing off their best defensive players lately, the defense should be just as bad, if not worse, than it was last year, which will just be more shootouts for the Bengals basically every week and more bang-outs for Jamar Chase. Breaking news, man. Jamar Chase is one of the best receivers in the NFL. He's playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL. And you should draft Jamar Chase. You're welcome.
Drew, thank you for that life-changing hot take that you just gave us tonight. Breaking news, Jamar Chase good at football.
Headline.
And Chris
he can catch the football.
No stripes or that.
Chris is also a fan of the bang-outs. Crazy take. Jaden Higgins over Ted McMillan. I think that's a little crazy. I ain't gonna lie to you, Brandon.
That's out there.
I like Jaden Higgins, but we're talking about a wide receiver 2 on his team with second-round draft capital versus a wide receiver 1 on his team with top 10 draft capital and led the NCAA in receiving yards in back-to-back seasons. Like I think a lot of folks have prospect fatigue whenever it comes to Terrell McMillan because we've been talking about how good he is for so long. And so I do, even though I like Jaden Higgins, and I think I'm actually above consensus on my ranking on him, I can't put him over Ted.
So
the B is for bang-outs, baby.
So
that's a slogan. Take notes, SEC. That is a slogan.
While we're out here making all these very bizarre conversations right now, talking about hitting the Diddy dance, Aidan, this is as good a time as any when we talk about a bus player to break out this sound tonight.
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust. Lord.
Nice.
So, Aidan, who you think is about to bust? Cincinnati Bengals in 2020.
I said nobody. I think they're all barely appropriate. Like, what am I gonna say? Like Mike Gesicki, like he's not on anyone's radar already. Like, who really cares? Like, I don't know. I'm not gonna force anybody. This is a high-powered offense for a reason. So I think everyone's barely appropriately as they should be.
Yeah, man, it's a pretty good offense to be drafting.
Can I give one?
Sure.
Mike Gesicki.
Mike Gesicki. No, I think Joe Burrow is valued appropriately in terms of like where he is among quarterbacks. Like I think he should be where he is among quarterbacks, but I don't think he should be going where he is among all players in drafts. Like, don't get me wrong, Joe Burrow is the best bet probably out of any quarterback to lead the league in passing attempts. He's going to be up there in yardage and touchdowns, but I am just this is my personal philosophy with how I approach fantasy football in one quarterback leagues. I am never going to take the earliest drafted pocket passing quarterback in fantasy football. I'm just not going to do it. Like, if you're going to invest in an early quarterback, I think it should be Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. If you don't get one of those guys that have the rushing upside, then I would rather wait and I take somebody like Justin Fields, who also has rushing upside, or just take a pocket passing quarterback that I think has upside that's going much, much later, because there's so little room for error whenever you invest in a pocket passing quarterback at that level of draft capital, where like Burrow has to throw for 40 touchdowns and 4,000 plus yards. Or, you're not going to pay off at that cost. There's just, and he could very easily do so. Like I said, if I had to make a bet of which quarterback is going to do that, Burrow would be at the top of that list because of how bad the Bengals defense is and how much they pass the ball. It's just not how I approach one quarterback leagues. And so Burrow is a guy that, as great as I think he is, I will probably have none of in drafts this year. And I think he's ranked appropriately among the other quarterbacks. I just don't think he should be going where he is in one quarterback leagues personally. That's just me. That's how I look at it.
Solid take, solid opinion. So, Kyle, I'm going to keep the awkwardness going. And since Aidan doesn't want any Bengals to bust in 2025, who are you going to go with as a value for the Cincinnati Bengals this year? This one is a slam dunk. It's obvious. A lot of people feel like he's going way too low, and I agree with you.
Yeah, the crazy thing about this Bengals offense is they have 4 dudes at the top of their position. You talked about it earlier, Jamar Chase, the clear-cut wide receiver 1. All you guys have them ranked there, which, by the way, let me give a quick plug out for these guys. They work so hard on this. They constantly updating, keeping you informed. Visit fantasyandframes.com for all of their rankings. Jorge, Drew, Nate, Rhett, Aidan, they all have you covered, working so hard and diligently for you at fantasyandframes.com. All right. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, of course. All right. So back to the Bengals. Chase, as we mentioned, number 1 wide receiver. T. Higgins is wide receiver 12 ECR. Chase Brown, RB 12. And Joe Burrow is a top 5 quarterback. So to get a strong piece to this offense, it's going to cost you a valuable draft pick. And it makes sense. We mentioned it earlier. They're a high-powered offense. You want a piece of that. But I still think that there's value there. There's some meat on the bone there for T. Higgins at wide receiver 12. I know he is kind of a boomer bust type receiver. He's been a little banged up too, missing 5 games in 2023, missing 5 games in 2024, but he still finished wide receiver 17 last year despite that. As the number 2 receiver in this offense, he's still a guy who gets 100+ targets in this offense. Jamar Chase averages 10 targets per game, right? T. Higgins is right there with him. He averages 9 a game. Joe Burrow led the league in end zone throws last year. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins made up half of those end zone targets. Chase with 18, Higgins with 15. I'll gladly take T. Higgins in the 3rd round because his receiving metrics are in the same ballpark as Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And with Chase demanding so much attention, it frees Higgins up for softer coverage. That kind of value in the 3rd round, I'm all in. And if he can stay healthy, because he hasn't the last 2 years, I do think, right, you may not like this, but I do think that Higgins and Chase can once again find themselves as a wide receiver 1 together, providing value there if he does. And it's a huge discount drafting him there in the 3rd round if he could pull it off.
I mean,
yeah, I've got the Bengals doing it again this year. I've got T. Higgins at wide receiver 11. So I've got him both inside my top 12. I think it's going to happen again. He's one of my favorite values too. Like I said, he was going to be my must draft if you wouldn't have picked him as the value. So I think it's a great call. And I don't know, man. This offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I hope the Bengals just keep pissing off their defensive players because it's for them having a bad defense. It's just absolutely beautiful for fantasy football. So.
And Kyle, before we move into Cleveland, I just want to let you know something real quick, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It's the 2nd time you covered me tonight, dog. And look, if we got some issues, we're going to handle it outside of the show. We're going to keep it rolling right now, all right? I'm just kidding. But
no, I'm messing. No, you're good.
So I'm good too, man. So I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Rhett's a target.
I'll come to Louisiana. I'm not scared.
Ooh.
Oh, boy. Wow. Drive on up here, then.
Beef on 4th and Frames and Speaking of beef, I think we all have beef with this last team we're about to talk about right now. Guys, I don't think anybody has fun talking Cleveland Browns fantasy football. I don't think anyone has fun talking Cleveland Browns football in general. And to be honest, this franchise has kind of done it to itself over the years. But we got to land on somebody in terms of our must draft player. Kyle, if we're going to go with a guy as a must draft, I think this is the way to go. I agree with you. So go ahead and make the case for David Njoku at ECR, tight end 8 being a must draft.
Yeah, assuming that Joe Flacco is the starter, it's pretty clear that David Njoku is a Browns player you must have. No one else really intrigues me after the Quinshon Judkins recent domestic violence arrest. The history of Flacco and Njoku together in Cleveland is just mouthwatering. When Flacco joined the team in 2023 after his first start in Week 13, Njoku was Brock Bowers-like, finishing tight end twice down the stretch, tight end 3 in the final 2 games. And if you want something more recent, I got you. Last year, he was tight end 4 on a per-game basis. With tight ends being such a crapshoot, after the top 3 or 4 at the position, Njoku just provides some good value at the tight end position with Joe Flacco at the helm, who has a history of feeding his tight ends.
I mean, there's not much to say. There's not much to disagree with there. I mean, we saw it last year. You mentioned it. Him being tight end 4 in spots, even with a very bad quarterback situation last year. So I think we're all on lockstep with Njoku being a must-draft guy, especially with tight end 8 being a situation where you can get him a little bit later. And Drew, we're going to go to a bust player, and I think we can kind of boil down this argument you're about to make in so many words. We could basically say this. Quarterback play, I think, has a lot to do with why you have Jerry Jeudy as a bust, as the ECL wide receiver 36. So break it down for us.
Yeah, I'll start by saying that I don't actually completely hate Jerry Jeudy's value in drafts like I thought I would. I thought he was going to be way overvalued after finishing as a wide receiver 26 in points per game last year. But shout out to the ECR. They're pretty smart on this one. It's wide receiver 36 is fair. It's not bad. I've got him at wide receiver 38. So technically I am lower than consensus on Jeudy, but not by as much as some of the other bust picks that I've had. But whenever I look at the Browns offense, the quarterbacks aren't even being drafted. Like, there's no reason to call them a bust. I love Njoku's value. I'm in lockstep with Kyle. I've got him in my top 5. And it felt like I don't know why it's so hard for NFL players to just not punch women, but it feels like cheating to pick Quinshon Judkins at this point, given everything that's going on. That just feels like a cop out to call him a bust at this point. And so if Jameis Winston would have been brought back to be the starting quarterback for the Browns this year, in those 7 weeks, Jameis playing YOLO ball, Jeudy had double-digit targets in 4 of those 7 games, and he was a wide receiver 1 in 3 of those 7 weeks. But Jeudy didn't have any week inside the top 12 wide receivers last year without Jameis starting, and he only finished inside the top 24 wide receivers outside of those 7 weeks once the entire rest of the year. So we're talking about barely even being a wide receiver 2. So I think he'll have some solid weeks to start the year, assuming that Joe Flacco is the quarterback. But unless the Browns are winning games, which I don't see happening very often, I don't think that they'll stick with Flacco the entire year. And the quarterback depth chart behind Flacco is a nightmare. And even whenever you look at the health of the Broncos, Jesus, I'm over the place, the Browns pass catchers, in the 4 games that Njoku, Cedric Tillman, and Jerry Jeudy were all healthy last year, Jeudy was 3rd in targets among those 3 guys. And so I don't think that the insane 10-plus targets we saw with Jameis for those 7 weeks, I think 4 or 5 of the 7 weeks, I think he was in double-digit targets. I don't think that's a realistic outcome this year with everybody healthy. And so I could see a world where he starts the season hot, turns into a very obvious sell high candidate. But all things considered, he's my bust candidate for the Browns this year.
I mean, it's a fair assessment on it. Aidan, You are taking this Judkins news and you are running with it. I'm going to politely disagree with you on a value because I think we should be having a Cedric Tillman conversation here. I think he is a guy that is grossly undervalued for what he is. But you're going a different direction, and I'd love to hear the argument.
Yeah, quick on the Tillman point. I understand the opportunity and the logic here. I'm just not nearly as high in the talent as the player as you and everyone else is. But back to my Dylan Sampson point, ECR RB60 right now. Obviously, the Judkins news. So Sampson, this guy wasn't even on my radar for redraft this year last week. But I talked about Jerome Ford not being just a guy to me, but just a guy in their eyes. And we saw that everyone thinks that I think Dylan Sampson, everyone thinks he's miscast as this receiving back, kind of just explosive, shifty guy. But no, he showed last year at Tennessee that he can handle a ton of volume. He can be a true lead back. He had 23 rushing touchdowns in the SEC. That's insane. The only thing that might be capped here is I don't know how high the touchdown ceiling is rushing and or receiving for Sampson, just because are the Browns really going to have that many opportunities, whether it's Flacco, Gabriel, Sanders, Pickett, whoever, any of those four names. So the touchdown ceiling could clearly be capped there, but Sampson can absolutely handle a lot of volume. He's a very good pass catcher as well, which I absolutely love for fantasy. So I don't think the rankings have adjusted to the Judkins potential suspension yet. But at RB60, even if it rises just a bit, I don't expect it to rise a ton. I'm absolutely taking Sampson. He's absolutely on my radar now.
Yeah, I do a lot of best balls.
Yeah, running back 60, I mean, it's worth taking a shot.
I do a lot of best balls, and I have seen Quinshon Judkins already drop about 10 spots overall on the best ball format on Underdog.
Mm-hmm.
And have you seen a move on Sampson's ADP or not really?
Not yet, but
it will. It will.
Yeah, it will.
I'm a hater a little bit because I'm a Kentucky fan, so I hate Tennessee, but I struggle to buy into Tennessee running backs in general, like the spread out Mickey Mouse offense that they run. Like the Tennessee running backs literally have like one man in the box whenever they're back there. Like it's just whenever
that's
you
for the
watch
receivers too.
It's insane, man. It's just wide open spaces whenever you're looking at the Tennessee running backs. But if you can get him at running back 60 with the unknown right now, why not?
Yeah.
So, guys, that is the AFC North. We went through all of our must-bust and value players for Baltimore. We said Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, and Keaton Mitchell were your must-bust and values. In Pittsburgh, DK Metcalf, Jalen Warren, and Caleb Johnson. In Cincinnati, Jamar Chase, Nobody, and T. Higgins. And for the Cleveland Browns, David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, and Dylan Sampson. Guys, before we get out of here, let's get into some AFC North bold predictions. Let's start in Baltimore, and let's start with you, Aidan. Give us a bold prediction for the Ravens here in 2025.
Yeah, you guys know how high I am on this player, so I am predicting a huge bounce back for tight end Mark Andrews. And how far will I go with that bounce back? Well, I'm predicting him to finish as a top 3 overall tight end by year's end for fans 2025 fantasy football. I don't want to say Isaiah Likely is a bad player, but for fantasy purposes, I think everyone overreacted and freaked out of the whole week 1 thing last year. And then, in terms of like high level production, we never really saw anything close to it for the rest of the year. So I do think people have skewed way too negatively on Mark Andrews and have skewed way too like highly and positively on Isaiah Likely, if that makes sense. So I'm going to take Mark Andrews just because I understand I like Isaiah Likely, but, after that big week 1 performance last year, I think he's kind of overvalued right now. So I'm very bullish on a big Mark Andrews bounce back, and I do believe he will finish as firmly a top 3 tight end this year.
Muggs, disagree with you.
He's accident before the season.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like people just brush that by, and I don't think people realize it's amazing he still had 11 touchdowns with that.
He started so slow. Like it's crazy.
Drew, give us a bold prediction for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's stick with the Caleb Johnson love, and let's go.
I love it.
I don't know if the pass catching is going to be there, so I can't say top 12. But let's go Caleb Johnson, top 15 running back season with plenty of rushing touchdowns to boost him up a little bit.
I love that.
So double digits, you thinking? If it's top 15 running back, it would have to be.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers getting the offense up and down the field. Caleb Johnson cashing in on some rushing touchdowns because the offense is now going to be more efficient than we expected whenever we thought that Mason Rudolph might be the starting quarterback for the Steelers. So, yeah, let's go Caleb Johnson, top 15, 10-plus rushing touchdowns.
Not half bad. Let's go to Cincinnati with me. And for me, some people might consider this a hot take, but we're not far off, where I think Jamar Chase is going to break the single season record for overall fantasy points at the wide receiver position here in 2025. And guys, I was looking through this, and in terms of half PPR seasons, there are only two guys who scored more fantasy points in a single season than Jamar Chase did last year with his 339.5. The first was Cooper Kupp in that monster 2021 season. The second was Jerry Rice in 1995, where Jerry Rice had 122 catches, 1,848 yards, 15.1 yards per reception, and 15 touchdowns, and averaged an insane 116 receiving yards per game. The Kupp season, he had 191 targets, 1,947 yards, and 16 receiving touchdowns. Guys, Chase last season wasn't that far off the Kupp pace. He had 127 receptions on 175 targets for 1,708 yards, same amount of yards per reception as Kupp did in that 2021 year, and he had an extra receiving touchdown to go. So the high end of Jamar Chase ends up being a difference of 15 or 16 catches. And in those 15 or 16 catches, you could easily see him getting another 200 yards, 250 yards on those. And in that case, you're looking at a guy who eclipses that Cooper Kupp production from 2021.
Do you think he breaks 2,000 this year? 2,000 receiving yards?
God, in that case, if he had 1846, if he had 1708 last year, God, he's right. He could be right on the brink this year. Let's be honest. I don't know if 2,000 is going to happen, but I think he has a chance to be close this year for sure.
I like it.
All right, and close us out, Kyle, with your hot take for America's favorite team, the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, mine's not nearly as sexy as yours, Rhett, but I'll go with Dylan Sampson, running back 60, will end up being the primary receiving back for the Browns, regardless of how the legal situation plays out with Quinshon Judkins. I think he will be the Kareem Hunt to Nick Chubb from a few years ago. Sampson at running back 60 will finish in the top. I don't want to say he will finish. I'll say has the opportunity, because if he is that primary receiving back, will have the opportunity to finish at top 30 at the running back position.
Fair enough. And so, guys, before we get out of here, whether you're taking Mark Andrews, Caleb Johnson, Jamar Chase, or Dylan Sampson, there's only one place to do this if you want to go have a quick, fun time on a draft, and that is Fast Draft. And make sure we are downloading and subscribing to that Fast Draft app today using our promo code FRAMES, where you will earn a first-time deposit match of up to $50 in credits. That Origins game, going to be huge for a guy like Caleb Johnson, for a Dylan Sampson, where you're drafting only rookies. You have Flex Floor game where you're picking your favorite players, maybe a Jamar Chase for the upcoming season. And their DF game, which is just like Flex for both IDP football players only. In all likelihood, you're not taking Shamar Stewart in that situation. If you've been following the news, you know what it is in that point. But what you will be doing is drafting on 20-second timers, PPR formatted, 6-round best ball leagues that are perfect for those itching to get a quick draft in, but also get that fantasy football fix satisfied. Once again, that promo code is FRAMES, and that's going to give you $50 in first-time deposit match. Start drafting faster at Fast Draft, ladies and gentlemen. So, fellas, before we get out of here, any final thoughts? No. All right.
Draft a lot of Cincinnati Bengals and don't draft Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
Two high-powered offenses and then two boring offenses.
My thought before I get out of here, because I don't think Kyle has anything, is I'm going to put it into three very simple words. Continuing our Kyle Pitts bit.
Oh, God.
Free Jonnu Smith is all I'm going to say before we get out of here.
Just got traded.
Yeah. He just got traded into the worst situation, but I digress.
I know.
But that's where we are tonight, guys. We were in the AFC North. Next week, we're going to take it down south. We're going to go to the Dirty. We're going to hit H-Town. We're going to hit Duval. We're going to go all those places and talk AFC South. And we're going to do that with Drew Scott at Drew3MR, at Aidan Weingartner at AWeingartner13, and with Kyle Ziegler at KZ1180. I'm Rhett Manuel at R Manuel Sports. We are Fourth and Frames. Toodles.